On the first Mother's Day after I buried my husband, my own children told me, "Mom, we have a special gift for you, just the way Dad would have liked it." In that moment, I realized that the hell I lived through for 30 years with my husband would continue through the monsters I had created myself. My dear friends, what a joy to be able to talk with you today. I'm Florence Taylor, 72 years young, born in a small town called Oak Ridge in Pennsylvania, but today I live here in Oceanside, California, close to the ocean that brings me so much peace. The smell of the sea breeze always calms me when I wake up early to watch the sunrise at Harbor Beach. These days, I spend my time tending to my small medicinal herb garden. I grow basil, rosemary, mint, lemon balm, lemongrass, and many other plants that I use to make teas and natural remedies. The neighbors always stop by asking for a little of each. "Miss Florence, I have a sore throat." "Miss Florence, my grandson has an upset tummy." And there I go, preparing my teas and concoctions that I learned from my grandmother. I started this garden about 15 years ago, when I finally got my own little house here in Oceanside. It was a fresh start, you know? Each seedling I planted represented a piece of me that was being reborn. Each new leaf was a silent victory. Today, my backyard is my sacred space, where I talk to God and give thanks for being alive and at peace. Right here where I'm sitting now, in this rocking chair on my back porch, I can see my entire garden. I have some orchids hanging that my dear friend Teresa gave me as a gift. The wind rustling through the leaves of the lemon tree makes such beautiful music. This is where I receive my friends from the church prayer group for our Wednesday afternoon coffee. Oh, before I continue my story, I wanted to make a special request to all of you watching. Please tell me in the comments, which town or city are you watching from? And what time of day did you find this video? Early morning with your coffee, after lunch, or already in the evening? I always read all the comments, and I'm so happy to know where you're from. And when you take a moment out of your day to listen to this grandma's stories, let me know, okay? Let's create a chain of affection. You know, my dears, life wasn't always this bed of roses that I see now from my window. There was a time when I lived in a hell that I helped build without realizing it. Today, I'm going to tell you a painful story, but one that needs to be shared. A story about how sometimes the greatest danger doesn't come from strangers, but from those we ourselves created and nurtured. And everything really started to get terrible on a Mother's Day, many years ago, when I received a gift that would change my life forever. But before I get to that part, I need to go back in time a bit so you understand how I got there. I was born in 1953 in a simple wooden house with a tin roof that made a terrible racket when it rained hard. My father, Arthur, worked at the coal mine, spent days away, and came home with calloused hands, but always brought a little pumpkin candy that he bought at Mr. Johnson's general store. My mother, Zelda, took care of me and my 3 brothers, Oscar, the oldest, Dale, the middle one, and me, the only girl, until my little brother Adam was born when I was 8. Our house in Oak Ridge was on the edge of a dirt road. It had only 2 bedrooms, one for my parents and another where the 4 of us children slept, on 2 straw mattresses on the floor. The kitchen had a wood stove that Mama lit early, while it was still dark, to make coffee. The bathroom was a small outhouse, and we bathed with a ladle and water heated in a kettle. On winter nights, which are quite cold in Pennsylvania, Mama would heat bricks in the embers and wrap them in cloth for us to put at our feet before sleeping. We woke up with the rooster's crow. My brothers would go help with the chores while I stayed with Mama, learning to make bread, lye soap, and tend to the garden. She always said, "Florence, a woman needs to know how to do a little bit of everything, because life doesn't make things easy." And it certainly didn't. While the rich girls in town studied at the elementary school with pretty uniforms, I only attended school until 3rd grade. After that, it was work at home, from sunup to sundown. On Sunday afternoons, after Mass at the little St. Benedict's Church, we would play in the yard. I loved playing Ring Around the Rosie with the neighborhood girls, Irene, Zoe, and Olivia. We would sing Ring Around the Rosie and London Bridge until the sun went down. My brother Dale was good at making kite string with glue and crushed glass and always won contests with the other boys. Oscar preferred to set traps to catch birds, which made my heart ache because I loved the little creatures. It was during this time when I was about 9 that I began to notice how things worked differently for men and women in our family. When there was a 4th of July celebration or community barn raising, Dad and my brothers could stay out late, drinking and telling stories. My mother and I had to return home early to prepare everything for the next day. "A woman on the street after 8 is a loose woman," my father would say, with that look that didn't accept discussion. I remember once when I didn't wash my father's Sunday shirt well. He came home, saw that yellowish stain on the white collar, and raised his hand to hit me. Mama stepped in front, took the slap in my place, and later, in secret, taught me to use bluing in the rinse water to make whites whiter. "This is how it's done, daughter. Men don't like poorly washed clothes," she explained, her face still red from the slap. At school, teacher Eulalia was strict but fair. She caught me drawing instead of doing multiplication tables and, instead of punishing me, gave me a little drawing notebook. "Girl, you have talent. Too bad it will go to waste." I didn't understand at the time what she meant, but now I know well. She saw my future before I could even imagine it, marrying young, having children, working in the fields, and repeating my mother's life. At 12, I had my monthly visitor for the first time. Mama explained about women's things in a whisper, as if it were a shameful secret. She taught me to use the cotton cloths she sewed herself and to wash them in secret, because men shouldn't see these intimacies. From then on, my brothers began to look at me differently. I could no longer swim in the creek with them, nor sit with my legs open, nor talk to boys after Mass. It was around this time that a large lumber company appeared in Oak Ridge and started hiring men from the region. My father left the coal mine and went to work at the sawmill. He earned a bit more, but started coming home more irritable, complaining about the boss, the heavy work, the foreman who rode him hard. And when he was irritable, it was better for everyone to stay quiet, because the smallest thing could make him explode. Mama always said, "Florence, when your father gets home, make sure the basin of warm water is ready for his feet and the whiskey is poured in his glass. A tired man gets angry easily, and a smart woman knows how to tame him." I obeyed, thinking that was the right way things should be. I didn't know I was learning lessons that would one day cost me dearly. And that was my childhood in Oak Ridge, between working in the fields, the few games, church on Sundays, and my mother's teachings about how to be a good woman. I dreamed of having a better life, maybe in the big city, far from that poverty. Little did I know that those dreams would lead me straight into the trap that destiny was setting. When I turned 13, in 1966, Daddy decided it was time to try life in a larger town. The sawmill where he worked suddenly closed, leaving many families without income in Oak Ridge. A distant cousin of his talked about opportunities in Glenwood, another town in Pennsylvania, but much larger, where they were building many buildings and needed strong men to work. We packed our few belongings in 2 wooden trunks and set off on a journey that took almost a full day in a cargo truck, sitting on top of our furniture. Our new house in Glenwood was a bit better than the previous one. It had electric light, something we knew little about in Oak Ridge. It was a small 2-story house in a narrow alley, but at least we had a bathroom inside the house, which Mama considered a true luxury. The floor was cement, cold on winter mornings, and the walls had moisture stains that formed strange patterns that gave me nightmares. Daddy got a job at a construction company as a laborer. Oscar, my oldest brother, already 17, also went to work on construction sites. Dale found a job delivering bread at a bakery. And I started helping Mama with laundry for others. We would wake up at 5 in the morning to collect bundles of dirty clothes from rich families downtown and spend the day scrubbing, bleaching, and ironing. It was during this time that I met Theodore Vance. He was a foreman at the construction company where Daddy worked, 28 years old, considered a man of position and respect in town. Tall, dark-haired, with a well-trimmed mustache and dark eyes that seemed to see right through you. He would often come to pick up Daddy for work in an olive green Jeep he had bought from the army, and every time he saw me hanging clothes on the clothesline in the yard, he would slow down and watch me. One Sunday after Mass, he showed up at our house bringing a gift for my father, a bottle of good quality whiskey. They sat talking in the living room while Mama had me serve coffee and cookies. I remember the way Theodore looked at me, following my every movement around the room. After a few visits like this, he finally spoke to my father. "Mr. Arthur, I've had my eye on your girl. I want to ask for her hand in courtship." Daddy, already tipsy from the whiskey, gave a laugh and replied, "But Florence is still a child, man. She's barely 14. Theodore wasn't deterred. He looked at me with those eyes that made me tremble and said something that only years later I would understand the true meaning of. "Country girls mature earlier, Mr. Arthur. And I prefer to catch them young to raise them my way." That night, I heard my parents arguing in their bedroom. Mama thought I was too young, that I should at least finish elementary school before thinking about marriage. But Daddy insisted it was a unique opportunity, an established man, with a good job, his own house, no vices except for an occasional cigarette. "He's a much better match than Florence could ever hope for," he said. "If we don't take advantage, she'll end up as a domestic servant or worse." 2 weeks later, I was officially engaged to Theodore Vance. I had no choice or voice in the decision. I got a thin gold ring that slipped off my finger, it was so big, and was instructed to call him Sir when we were in public. The courtship was supervised, always in our living room with my parents nearby. Theodore brought gifts not just for me but for the whole family. A new radio, fabric for Mama to make dresses, even a bicycle for Adam, my little brother. But there was something in the way he talked to me when no one was paying attention. "When we're married, I'll teach you to be a real woman," he would whisper, holding my wrist tight enough to leave marks. "No gossiping with the neighbors or swaying your hips in the street. My woman has composure." I remember one day when we were sitting on the porch and my cousin Eustace came to visit. He was my age, and we had grown up together in Oak Ridge. When Theodore saw us laughing at a silly joke, his face transformed. He didn't say anything at the time, but when Eustace left, he squeezed my arm so hard that I was left with 5 purple marks from his fingers. "I never want to see you laughing like that with another man again. Understood?" I nodded, swallowing my tears. When I told Mama about what happened, she just sighed and said, "Men get jealous, my daughter. It's because he likes you. But be careful not to provoke him." The wedding was set for the day after my 15th birthday. I didn't have a sweet 16 party like I dreamed of, just a simple cake after the ceremony at the church. My dress was sewn by Mama with a simple white fabric, without the embroidery and lace I saw in magazines. Theodore didn't want extravagances. He said it was important to save for our future. The night before the wedding, Mama came to give me the talk. She sat on the edge of the bed where I slept with my brothers and, in a low voice, told me, "Florence, tomorrow you'll become a married woman. What happens between husband and wife in bed is a wife's duty. Sometimes it hurts, sometimes it's uncomfortable, but you need to endure it silently. Never say no to your husband. A man who is rejected by his wife will look elsewhere. And close your eyes if he's rough. Men can't control their nature." I didn't really understand what she meant. In catechism classes, the priest talked about the sacrament of matrimony as a sacred and blessed union by God. He never mentioned pain or suffering. In my girlish mind, I still imagined that being married was like in the photo novels, a handsome and gentle man, a tidy house, maybe good-natured children playing in the yard. The reality was very different. Our honeymoon was in Theodore's own bedroom, where I moved with my single suitcase of clothes. The first night was a nightmare that I dare not describe in detail, but I woke up the next day feeling that my body no longer belonged to me. I cried hidden in the bathroom while Theodore prepared coffee, whistling as if nothing had happened. "From today on, you will no longer wear pants," he announced as we ate. only dresses below the knee. And that hair needs to be cut shorter. I don't want my woman looking like a television actress. It was just the beginning of an endless list of rules. I couldn't wear lipstick. I couldn't listen to loud music. I couldn't chat at the window with neighbors. I couldn't go out alone, even to shop. My world, which was already small, kept narrowing until it fit only inside that house. My parents and brothers would visit us on Sundays. Mama would look at me with a mixture of concern and resignation, but never asked how I really was. I think she feared the answer. Daddy and Theodore would drink and talk about football and politics as if everything was normal. No one noticed, or pretended not to notice, when I appeared with an improvised bandage on my arm or with heavier makeup to hide a mark on my face. Fell down the stairs, Theodore would explain, laughing. My wife is very clumsy. At 16, I became pregnant with my first child. The pregnancy didn't improve my situation, on the contrary. Theodore became even more controlling, accusing me of using the belly as an excuse not to fulfill my wifely duties. When the doctor recommended rest in the last trimester because of bleeding, he called me lazy and useless, like your mother. Gerald was born in 1970, a strong boy who soon showed he had his father's temperament. A year and a half later came Isaac. And in 1975, completing our family, Walter was born. 3 sons, Theodore's pride, who made a point of showing everyone how his heirs were strong and brave. I'm raising real men, not sissies, he would say when teaching the boys, still small, to throw punches in the air. Women need to be hit once in a while so they don't get too confident. And the boys laughed, finding it funny, without understanding the horror behind those words, or perhaps understanding all too well. The years went by, and my children grew in the image and likeness of their father. Theodore made a point of educating the boys to be men, as he said. That meant teaching them that crying was for sissies, that feelings were weakness, and that women needed to be tamed. How many times did I hear him say at the dinner table, "Look how your mother obeys properly. That's how you have to make your women be when you grow up." When Gerald was 8, Theodore began to encourage him to correct me when I did something wrong. "Go on, son. Show your mother who's boss. Give her a little slap because she spilled coffee on the tablecloth." And my boy, wanting his father's approval, would slap me on the arm while Theodore laughed, proud. The worst was seeing the eyes of my other sons, Isaac and Walter, shining with admiration for their older brother. Our house in Glenwood had become a school of violence, where Theodore was the teacher and my sons, diligent students. The television he bought in 1980, a luxury that few had in the neighborhood, could only be turned on for the news and football. "These soap operas only teach shamelessness to women," he would say. Even when he was traveling for work, the boys followed the rules to the letter. "Dad said you can't watch TV, Mom." At home, I was less than a maid. At least maids receive a salary and can leave at the end of the day. I cooked, washed, ironed, cleaned, tended the garden, sewed the boys' clothes, and still had to always be tidy when Theodore came home from work. A hair out of place, a button poorly sewn on his shirt, a stain on the coffee cup. Anything was reason for what he called correction. The people in the neighborhood pretended not to see, not to hear. When I appeared with a black eye at Sunday Mass, the women would look away. The men greeted Theodore with respect. After all, he had been promoted to engineer at the construction company after studying at night. He was successful, had a nice house, a family. Once, in 1983, I gathered the courage to go to the police station when Theodore broke my arm in an argument about Walter's low grade at school. The sheriff, Officer George, was Theodore's buddy, godfather to my Isaac's baptism. He looked at me with a mixture of irritation and disdain. "Mrs. Florence, husband and wife problems are solved at home. What do you want? To destroy your family? To leave your children without a father? Go home and be a better wife, and these things won't happen." I returned home devastated, my arm throbbing inside the makeshift cast. Theodore was waiting for me in the living room, a belt wrapped around his hand. I don't need to say what happened next. What hurt me most, however, was seeing my children watching it, learning that this was how you treated a rebellious woman. In 1987, Theodore received an offer to work at a larger construction company in Charleston, South Carolina. It was an important position, with a better salary and a house provided by the company. We packed everything and moved. Gerald, already 17, was furious about leaving his friends, school, girlfriend. He blamed me for the move, as if I had any decision-making power. "Why didn't you convince Dad to stay? You're only good for saying yes to everything he wants." Our house in Charleston was larger, in a middle-class neighborhood, with a front yard and backyard. The neighbors were more distant, everyone in their own lives. This meant fewer curious looks, fewer questions about bruises, fewer witnesses. Theodore now wore a tie, had a management position, needed to keep up appearances. The violence became more calculated, less impulsive, but equally devastating. The boys enrolled in good schools. Theodore insisted they study, that they become somebody in life, not a nobody like your grandfather. Gerald chose to follow engineering like his father. Isaac decided to study business administration. Walter, always quieter, ended up going into accounting. They all studied and worked. Theodore did not tolerate laziness. I tried to get a job at a clothing store near the house. For a brief moment, I dreamed of a little independence, of having my own money, maybe saving it secretly for one day. I don't even know for what. Perhaps just to feel that I had choices. Theodore discovered it when he saw the job application form that I had filled out in secret. "Are you crazy? My wife doesn't work outside the home." "What will people think? That I can't support my family? That my wife needs to lower herself to work at a counter?" He tore the paper into little pieces in front of me and threw it in my face. That night, we ate in silence, the tension so thick it seemed difficult to breathe. After the boys went to sleep, he taught me to never again try to equal a man. The 90s arrived, and with them some changes in the world. On television, they began to talk about women's rights, about domestic violence. There were reports, telephone numbers for complaints. But in our house, time seemed to have stood still. My sons were already adults, but still lived under the same roof, still followed Theodore's rules, still treated me as he treated me. A new neighbor moved into the house next door in 1995. Norma was a university professor, divorced, with modern ideas. She tried to get close to me, invited me for coffee, noticed when I appeared injured. Once, she gave me a newspaper clipping with information about a shelter for women in situations of violence. "Florence, nobody deserves to live like this. You can leave, you can start over." I hid the paper inside my Bible, the only place Theodore didn't look. For weeks, I looked at that phone number, imagining a different life. But then I thought, where would I go? I was already over 40, had never worked outside the home, had no money of my own, had no education. And my children? They would be against me, I'm sure. They were so molded by their father that they would see me as a traitor. One day, Theodore found the clipping. I don't know how. Maybe he saw me looking at the Bible frequently. He didn't say anything, just smiled in a way that chilled my soul. 3 days later, I discovered that Norma had been hastily transferred to another city. I never knew what he did or said, but I knew that smile. It was the same one he gave when he solved problems at work. The years passed like a gray fog. Gerald married in 1997 to Heather, a shy girl from the church. I saw in her eyes the same fear I had carried in mine for decades. I wanted to warn her, to say something, but the words got stuck in my throat. What right did I have to speak when I couldn't even save myself? Isaac found Diana in 1999, a woman slightly older than him, widowed, with a little daughter. Theodore didn't approve. Divorced women are no good. But for the first time, Isaac confronted him. It was the only time I saw one of my sons disagree with their father. I thought maybe there was hope for him. What a mistake. Soon after the wedding, the comments started. "She talks too much. I need to teach her to respect men." My heart tightened hearing that. Walter, the youngest, remained single longer. Quiet, observant, he seemed the least aggressive of the three. Perhaps that's why Theodore rode him harder, calling him soft and weak. When he finally introduced his girlfriend Zoe in 2002, it was as if he wanted to prove something to his father. "She knows her place, Dad. I guarantee she won't give trouble like the others." In 2004, on Theodore's 66th birthday, I had a strange premonition. He seemed more irritated than normal, complaining of chest pains, tingling in his arm. The doctor had recommended less salt, less fat, no alcohol. But Theodore was Theodore. Nobody told him what he could or couldn't do. "I'll eat what I want, drink what I want. I'm not going to be like those nursing home old men eating mush." It was on a Sunday morning in January 2005. Theodore woke up, complained about the pain in his chest, cursed me because the coffee was weak, and fell in the middle of the kitchen. His eyes widened in surprise, as if he couldn't believe something like this could happen to him. I called the ambulance, shouted for the boys, did everything I was supposed to do. But when the paramedics arrived, it was already too late. "Massive heart attack," they said. At the wake, I stood beside the coffin as protocol demanded. People came to offer condolences, to say how Theodore was a good man, hard-working, dedicated to his family. I nodded, my eyes dry. I couldn't cry. Inside me, a small flame of hope began to light up. At 52, for the first time in my adult life, I was free. Little did I know that the nightmare was just changing form. After the burial, when we returned home, my three sons, Gerald at 35, Isaac at 33, and Walter at 30, called me for a talk in the living room. They sat in the same places they occupied when their father was alive, as if his ghost still presided over the family meeting. "Mom," Gerald began, with the same serious expression as his father, "now that Dad is gone, we have to take care of you. He left us this responsibility." I nodded, not understanding the weight of those words. I thought they were talking about helping financially, about being around. I didn't imagine what would come next. "You'll continue living here," he continued, "but some things will change. Each of us will take on a part of the household expenses, and in return, you'll take care of everything as you always did." "And no going out alone," added Isaac. "A woman without a husband becomes an easy target. Dad wouldn't like to see you giving people something to talk about." Walter just watched, quiet as always, but nodding at each of his brother's words. It was as if Theodore had divided into three and continued there, controlling my life. The morning after the burial, I woke up with a strange sensation, a mixture of grief for the loss. After all, it had been almost 40 years together, and a glimpse of the possibility of a different life. I thought about maybe painting the room a lighter color, rearranging the furniture, planting different flowers in the garden. Small changes that would have been impossible with Theodore. But I soon realized that the chains had merely changed hands. My sons took turns keeping me company, in reality, to watch over me. When I suggested changing the color of the living room curtains, Gerald frowned. "Dad chose that color. Why change it now?" The weeks after the funeral were for adjustments. The boys, grown men, but always boys to me, took control of everything. Gerald handled the finances, Isaac the house issues, repairs, taxes, and Walter was in charge of accompanying me on necessary outings, market, pharmacy, doctor, never alone, never free to choose what to wear, what to watch on TV, what time to go to sleep. Theodore's shadow hovered over us, guiding each decision, each rule, each prohibition. Mother's Day 2005 arrived just 4 months after Theodore's death. It was the first without him, and I confess I felt a little flutter in my stomach, thinking that maybe, just maybe, it could be a different day. In the previous weeks, I noticed my sons whispering among themselves, exchanging complicit looks. Naively, I thought they were preparing some pleasant surprise for me. On the morning of that Sunday, I woke up early as usual to prepare coffee. Gerald had insisted that everyone have lunch at our house, including the wives and grandchildren. I made sure to do my best with the meal: fried chicken with mashed potatoes, the recipe my mother taught me. While cooking, I daydreamed. Maybe my sons would give me flowers. Maybe the little grandchildren had made colorful cards at school. After lunch, when we finished collecting the dishes, Gerald asked everyone to gather in the living room. The children were sent to the backyard to play. Their wives sat quietly in a corner, as if they already knew what was coming. My 3 sons stood side by side, staring at me with an expression that immediately reminded me of Theodore. "Mom," Gerald began, "today is a special day, the first Mother's Day since Dad left us." I nodded, a knot forming in my throat. There was something in his tone that didn't seem right. "The 3 of us talked a lot," he continued, "about how to honor Dad's memory and how to maintain our family traditions." Isaac stepped forward. "You know Dad was a man of principles. He taught us that a house needs order, discipline." Walter, usually the quietest, completed, "And he taught us that this discipline needed to be reinforced from time to time." It was at this moment that I understood. My heart started beating so hard I thought I might faint. My hands began to tremble, and I felt a bitter taste in my mouth. "We have a special gift for you," announced Gerald, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Just the way Dad would have liked it. What happened next was like a slow-motion nightmare. Gerald approached and slapped me across the face, not hard enough to leave a mark, but enough to burn my skin and my soul. "This is for making the food too salty today." Isaac came next. "And this is for talking to that new neighbor without our permission." Another slap, this time harder. Walter hesitated for a brief second. I saw something in his eyes, maybe doubt. But he quickly composed himself and completed the ritual. "And this is to remind you that you still need correction, even with Dad gone." A push that made me fall seated on the sofa. I was paralyzed, tears silently streaming down my face. Not from physical pain. That was nothing compared to what I had already endured at Theodore's hands. It was the pain of total and devastating understanding. My sons, whom I had carried in my womb, nursed, raised with all the love I could give despite the circumstances, had become extensions of their father. The abuse would continue through them. "This will happen every Mother's Day," explained Gerald, like someone explaining a simple rule to a child. "It's our way of honoring Dad and ensuring that you stay on the right path." I looked at my daughters-in-law. Heather, Gerald's wife, kept her eyes down, her hands nervously squeezing the fabric of her skirt. Diana, Isaac's wife, bit her lower lip, a solitary tear running down her face. Zoe, the youngest, married to Walter, seemed in shock, her face as pale as paper. That night, locked in my room, I cried until there were no more tears. Not for what had happened, I was already used to much worse, but for the understanding that there would never be escape. The cycle would continue, year after year, Mother's Day after Mother's Day, until I died or they tired of it. In the months that followed, I saw subtle changes in my sons' behavior with their wives. The same control, the same corrections, the same humiliations that Theodore inflicted on me. It was like watching a movie I already knew, frame by frame, unable to change the script. Mother's Day 2006 repeated the ritual, and 2007 as well. It transformed into a macabre tradition, a horrible secret that we shared as a family. My grandchildren grew up watching, learning, just as my sons had learned from their father. It was in October 2007 that Walter arrived home with the news. "Zoe is pregnant." Everyone celebrated, especially when the ultrasound revealed it would be a girl, the first in the family after so many boys. I saw the way my son looked at his wife's belly, a mixture of pride and something more, possessiveness. "I'm going to raise her right," he commented during dinner. "None of this modern independent woman nonsense. She'll be a respectable young lady." Something awakened inside me at that moment. A spark that I thought had been extinguished decades ago. A girl. my granddaughter, destined to repeat my story, to live under the same yoke I lived. That night, I had a vivid dream about my mother. She was standing in the kitchen of our old house in Oak Ridge, kneading bread. She looked at me and said, with a clarity she never had in life, "Florence, you let this happen. Now are you going to let it happen to your granddaughter too?" I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding. For the first time in many years, I felt something beyond fear and resignation. I felt anger, a deep, visceral anger that burned inside. Not for myself, it was too late for me, but for that child who had not yet been born, for my daughters-in-law who lived the same hell I had lived. The next day, I began to observe Zoe more carefully. I noticed the fearful looks she cast at Walter when he raised his voice, the way she shrank when he made a sudden movement. I began to find ways to be alone with her, offering to help with the baby's layette, to accompany her to the doctor. One afternoon, while we were sewing little clothes for the baby together, I gathered my courage. "Zoe, my dear, does he hurt you?" She froze. The needle paused in the air, her eyes wide with fear. After a long silence, a single tear ran down her face. She didn't need to say anything. "How long?" "Since the first year of marriage," she whispered. "At first it was just yelling, then pushing, now—" Her voice failed. I took her hands in mine, noticing the small bruises on her wrists. So familiar. "You know it's not your fault, right?" She broke down in silent tears. "He says I provoke him, that I don't know how to be a good wife. Now with the baby coming, I'm so afraid." At that moment, something broke and reconnected inside me. A determination I hadn't felt since my youth, before Theodore destroyed my will. "This can't continue, Zoe. Not with you, not with the baby." In the months that followed, I began to do small things. I managed to hide a small notebook where I recorded dates, times, details of each incident I witnessed or heard. When I was alone, I secretly listened to radio programs that talked about domestic violence, writing down phone numbers, names of organizations. The internet, which my sons allowed me to use only for recipes and appropriate subjects, became my secret ally. I learned to clear the browsing history after searching for women's shelters, legal rights, how to escape abusive relationships. Each day I gathered more information, more courage. Zoe wasn't the only one. Through careful conversations, I discovered that Heather and Diana lived in similar situations. 3 women, 3 stories the same as mine. And soon, a little girl would enter this perverse cycle. In April 2008, Zoe gave birth to a healthy girl whom they named Olivia. When I held that little creature in my arms for the first time, I made a silent promise. "You will not live as I lived. You will be free." Mother's Day 2008 was approaching, and with it, the terrible ritual that my sons had established. But this time, I had a plan. A dangerous plan that could destroy my family. Or save it. 3 weeks before the date, I began to prepare the ground. I casually commented to Gerald, "Son, I was thinking of making a special Mother's Day lunch this year, inviting the girls' families too. After all, Heather, Diana, and Zoe are mothers now too." He frowned, suspicious. "I don't know if that's a good idea, Mom. Our family traditions are private." "But it would be so nice, everyone gathered together. The girls' parents would like to see their grandchildren, and your mother-in-law is always saying she misses her daughter." I mentioned the idea several times, with gentle insistence. Finally, to my surprise, they agreed, perhaps thinking that the presence of strangers wouldn't prevent the traditional gift, just delay it until after everyone left. On Mother's Day morning, I woke up with my heart pounding. I spent hours in the kitchen, preparing the most elaborate meal I had ever made. I set the table with the embroidered tablecloth I kept for special occasions, put flowers in vases all around the house. When the family started arriving, Heather's parents, Diana's parents, and Zoe's parents, plus some aunts and uncles and cousins, I noticed the discomfort on my sons' faces. They weren't used to having so many strangers in our house, witnessing our interactions. The lunch proceeded with poorly disguised tension. My sons were polite, but cold. Their wives nervous, casting apprehensive glances at me, at them, at their own parents. I maintained a placid smile, serving the food, making small talk. When dessert was served, a perfect bread pudding without a single bubble, Gerald cleared his throat. "Well, I think it's time for the gifts, isn't it?" It was the moment I had waited for years without knowing. I rose slowly, feeling all eyes turned to me. My hands were shaking, but my voice came out firm when I began to speak. "Yes, Gerald, it's time for the gifts. But this year, I have a gift for you first." The room fell into absolute silence. You could hear the ticking of the wall clock, a gift that Theodore had received from colleagues when he retired. I took a deep breath, feeling a strange warmth in my chest. It wasn't fear, it was determination. "I want to tell all of you a story. A family story that began a long time ago, when I married Theodore Vance." My sons exchanged uneasy glances. Gerald made a motion to interrupt me, but I raised my hand in a gesture that surprised everyone, including myself. "No, son. Today you're going to listen to me. All of you." And I began to narrate, with a calmness I didn't know I possessed, the story of my marriage. The first signs of control, the first slaps, the first humiliations. How Theodore isolated me from family, from friends, from anyone who might help me. How he used the children, our children, as witnesses and then accomplices to the abuse. Theodore broke my arm in 1983 because Walter got a low grade at school. Remember that, boys? You were 13, 11, and 8 years old. You saw your father throw me against the wall, and then you dragged me to the hospital, where he told the doctor I had fallen down the stairs. The guests' faces showed growing horror. Zoe's parents, Mr. Oliver and Mrs. Grace, looked at me with wide eyes. Heather's mother, Mrs. Dorothy, brought her hands to her mouth. I continued, keeping my voice firm. When Theodore died, I thought I would finally have peace, but my sons decided to continue their father's legacy. Do you know what happened on Mother's Day after his death? I looked directly at each of my sons as I described, without sparing details, the ritual they had created. The slaps, the pushes, the humiliations, all justified as a way to honor their father's memory and maintain discipline in the house. And it's not just with me. Look at your wives. Really look. It was at this moment that Gerald stood up, his face red with fury. "Mom, enough. You don't know what you're saying. You're confused, mixing things up." "Confused? Then tell me, Heather, what happened last week when you burned Gerald's shirt? That mark on your arm, was that an accident too?" Heather turned pale, her eyes filled with tears. Her father, Alan, turned slowly to his son-in-law, a silent question in his gaze. "And you, Diana? Do you want to tell your parents why you had to invent a fall down the stairs last month? Or you, Zoe? Do you want to explain why you're afraid to even speak when Walter raises his voice?" The silence in the room was dense, suffocating. Then, to my surprise, it was Zoe who spoke first, her voice trembling but determined. "It's true. Everything Mrs. Florence is saying is true." Her father, Oliver, jumped to his feet. "What's going on here? Walter, did you hit my daughter?" My youngest son, always the quietest, just lowered his head. He didn't deny it, couldn't deny it. It was as if a dam had broken. Heather began to cry openly. Diana, always the strongest of the three, looked at her parents and confirmed with a nod. Isaac pushed me down the stairs because I disagreed with him in front of a client. Chaos installed itself in the room. Shouts, accusations, denials. My sons tried to justify, to minimize, as they always did. "You don't understand, it's how we were raised. Dad always said." But this time there were witnesses. People from outside, people who didn't accept that as normal, as inevitable. Arthur, Diana's father, a normally calm man, was livid with anger. "My daughter left my house for this? To be treated like an animal? Diana, pack your things. You and the children are coming home right now. Alan, Heather's father, grabbed his son-in-law by the shirt. If you ever lay a finger on my daughter again. Oliver, Zoe's father, simply went to his daughter, took little Olivia in his arms and said, "Let's go home, my child. This ends today." My sons looked incredulous, as if they couldn't comprehend what was happening. All their lives they had been taught that what they did was normal, was right, was a man's role. Now they faced the judgment of the outside world. That afternoon was the beginning of the end of the cycle of abuse in our family. The daughters-in-law, with their children, returned to their parents' homes. Divorce proceedings were initiated. My sons, for the first time in their lives, faced real consequences for their actions. Gerald lost his job at the construction company when his father-in-law, who was one of the partners, revealed the situation. Isaac faced a charge of assault, which only didn't proceed because Diana decided not to pursue it, thinking of the children. Walter, perhaps the least hardened of the three, was the only one to seek help. He began attending a support group for abusive men, encouraged by his father-in-law, who, despite everything, didn't give up on him. As for me, I could no longer stay in that house with my sons. In the weeks following the confrontation, I received threatening calls, surprise visits, attempts to make me retract what I had said. "You destroyed our family," they accused. "How could you do this to us?" It was Mrs. Grace, Zoe's mother, who extended her hand to me. "Florence, you saved my daughter and my granddaughter. Our home is open to you for as long as you need." So, at 55, I packed my bags and left the house where I had lived for more than 2 decades. I moved to the home of Zoe's parents, in Myrtle Beach, a city about 60 miles from Charleston. There, for the first time since I was 15, I experienced what it was like to live without fear. At first it was strange, even disconcerting. Not having to ask permission to go out, to watch television, to use the phone, being able to choose the clothes I wanted to wear, the time to sleep and wake up. Small freedoms that for many are trivial, but for me were daily revolutions. Zoe was there too, with little Olivia. Gradually, we healed together. She, so young, had a chance to start over. I, already middle-aged, felt that I was learning to live for the first time. I got a job at a small craft store. I had always been good with handcrafts, sewing, crochet, embroidery, skills that Theodore despised as idle women's things. Now, these same skills guaranteed me a small salary, the first money I earned by my own effort. Zoe's parents were good, simple people who treated me with respect that I never knew in a home. Mr. Oliver, especially, seemed determined to show me that not all men were like Theodore or my sons. "Mrs. Florence, you don't need to serve me first at the table. In this house, everyone is equal." Small lessons in dignity that I absorbed day by day. Slowly, I began to rebuild myself as a person, to discover who Florence was without the chains of fear. Contact with my sons was scarce during that first year. Attempts at reconciliation that always ended in accusations, in veiled threats. Until one day, to my surprise, Walter appeared alone at the door of his in-laws' house. "Mom," he said, eyes downcast. "I'm in therapy. I'm trying to understand what happened to us, to all of us." It was the beginning of a long journey. Walter was the first to truly recognize the evil we had lived, the evil he had perpetuated. Through him, with much time and patience, I began to rebuild a relationship with Isaac as well. Gerald, the oldest, the most like his father, was the last, and to this day, our relationship is distant, formal. Zoe and Walter tried a reconciliation, but with strict conditions established by her parents. He had to continue therapy, attend the support group, demonstrate real changes in behavior. It was a slow process, with ups and downs, but which eventually gave results. In 2010, at 57, I decided it was time to have my own space. With the money I had saved from working at the craft store, plus a little help from Mr. Oliver and Mrs. Grace, I managed to buy a simple little house in Oceanside. A new city, where nobody knew me, where I could start over without the weight of the past. My house was small, 2 bedrooms, living room, kitchen, and a small backyard. But it was mine. I painted the walls the color I wanted, arranged the furniture the way I liked, planted the flowers I had always dreamed of having. For the first time in my life, I created a space that reflected who I was, not what someone forced me to be. The medicinal herb garden started almost by accident. A neighbor gave me mint and rosemary seedlings, another brought basil and oregano. I remembered my grandmother's knowledge, the plants she cultivated back in Oak Ridge. Little by little, I transformed that small space into a healing garden, for me and for others. Word spread quickly in the neighborhood. Miss Florence has a remedy for everything. I began to receive visits from people seeking relief for minor ailments, headaches, insomnia, digestive problems. I prepared the teas, the infusions, the poultices, always accompanied by a good conversation. That's how, without realizing it, I created a new family, not of blood, but of choice. Women from the neighborhood who gathered in my kitchen, sharing stories, supporting each other. Some fleeing situations similar to what I lived, others simply seeking a space where they could be heard, respected. Zoe and Olivia would visit me regularly. My granddaughter grew strong, intelligent, full of opinions and dreams, everything I could never be at her age. Walter would come along sometimes, a different man from the one my husband had raised. Therapy helped him break the cycle, recognize the toxic patterns he had learned since childhood. Isaac eventually also found his way. After the divorce, he went through a difficult period, but the shock of losing his family forced him to question everything he believed. Today, he has a cordial relationship with Diana, visits the children regularly, and has even started a new relationship, this time, I hope, based on mutual respect. Gerald was the only one who never really changed. He lost Heather, his job, the respect of the community. He became bitter, isolated, blaming everyone but himself for the destruction of his life. I still hope that one day he will realize the truth, but I know that some people never completely break with the past. As for me, I discovered that it's never too late to start over, to reinvent yourself. At 60, I did something I never imagined possible. I went back to school. I completed elementary education through the adult education program. The following year, I started high school. It was difficult, of course, after so many decades away from studies, but each small achievement was a trophy against everything they tried to take from me. Today, at 72, I look back and see the path I've traveled. From the naive girl from Oak Ridge to the broken woman of Glenwood and Charleston, until finally becoming the person I am today in Oceanside. A survivor, a woman who found her voice after decades of forced silence. The herb garden continues to grow, as do I. Each new plant that sprouts is a reminder that life always finds a way, even in the most arid soils, even after the most devastating storms. And that girl I fought for, my granddaughter Olivia, is now 16 years old. Intelligent, determined, with plans to study law, to defend women like you and Mom, Grandma. When I hear her talk like this, I know it was all worth it, that the cycle was broken, that the future will be different. Here in Oceanside, my life today is made of small joys. I wake up early with the first ray of sun, a habit I never lost from my girlhood days in Oak Ridge. I open the windows, breathe deeply the fresh morning air, and give thanks for another day of freedom. My house is simple, but cozy. On the living room walls, pictures embroidered by myself, landscapes, flowers, colorful birds. On the bookshelf, the books I've accumulated over the years after I rediscovered the pleasure of reading. The kitchen is the heart of the house, with herbs drying in bunches hanging from the ceiling, carefully labeled glass jars, the wooden table where I receive friends and neighbors. My routine has the sweet taste of choice. I choose to wake up early to tend the garden in the coolest hours. I choose what I'll eat for breakfast, what I'll wear, where I'll go. Small decisions that many make without thinking, but which for me represent daily victories against a past of impositions. 3 times a week, I go to the senior center downtown. There, I do water aerobics, participate in craft workshops, play dominoes with Miss Teresa and Mr. Arnold. These are precious friendships I've built in these years in Oceanside, people who knew me already free, who don't carry the weight of knowing all my past. On Wednesdays, I host at home the prayer group I formed with some ladies from the neighborhood. We are 8 women, all with intense life stories, some similar to mine. We pray together, share concerns and joys, have tea with homemade cookies. It's a sacred moment of the week where we strengthen each other. My small medicinal herb business grew gradually. I started selling only to neighbors, then to acquaintances of acquaintances. Today, I have loyal customers who come from various neighborhoods in Oceanside. I don't earn much. My Social Security, though modest, is my main source of income, but enough to buy new books, gift my grandchildren, take an occasional trip to visit Zoe in Myrtle Beach. Walter and Zoe completely reconciled after years of therapy and hard work. He became a different man from what he was raised to be. When I see him playing with Olivia, teaching her gently, respecting her opinions even when he disagrees, I feel that at least a part of my struggle was worth it. Besides Olivia, I have 5 more grandchildren. Isaac and Diana's children, Theodore Jr. and Andrew, are already teenagers. Despite their parents' divorce, they grew up knowing the value of respect. Isaac learned, the hard way, that the father model he knew wasn't what he wanted to reproduce. Today, he maintains a friendly relationship with Diana, and his new partner, Odette, is a strong woman who wouldn't accept less than equality. Gerald has 2 children with Heather, Isidore and Claire. After the divorce, he disappeared for years, only recently reappearing in the children's lives. Our conversations are still tense, formal, full of uncomfortable silences, but at least now we talk. It's a beginning, even if late. Technology, which before was denied to me, is now an ally. I learned to use the cell phone. I have my own tablet where I read books, watch recipe videos, and most importantly, keep in touch with family and friends. I make video calls with the grandchildren, participate in WhatsApp groups with my friends from the senior center, follow pages about growing herbs and medicinal plants. My garden continues to be my greatest joy. In recent years, I expanded it to include ornamental flowers as well. Orchids are my favorites. They require patience, constant care, but reward with flowers of extraordinary beauty. Like life, I sometimes think. The neighbors stop to admire when they're blooming, and I always have seedlings to gift to those who are interested. I don't hold grudges from the past. It took time, a lot of time and a lot of therapy, but I learned that resentment would only keep me tied to the old pains. Theodore has been gone for a long time. The damage he caused remains, scars on the soul that sometimes still hurt when the weather changes, but they don't define who I am today. My little house in Oceanside has become a safe harbor, not just for me, but for other women in the community. It's not uncommon for me to receive visits from younger ladies brought by mutual friends who come just for tea. I recognize in their eyes the same fear I carried, the same rehearsed excuses for bruises and broken bones. I offer tea, understanding, and when they're ready, the phone number of people who can really help. On Sundays, I attend the local church. Not the big cathedral downtown, but a small chapel in the neighborhood. Father Jerome is a gentle man who preaches about love and mutual respect. After Mass, there's always a community coffee where people talk, share news, strengthen the bonds that unite us as a community. My life today is simple, but deeply satisfying. Each decision I make, each moment of tranquility, each night of sleep without nightmares is a victory over the past. I live alone, but never feel lonely. My house is always open for those who need a tea, a conversation, a friendly shoulder. Sometimes I sit in my rocking chair on the porch, looking at the garden I created with my own hands, and think about the long journey that brought me here. From the frightened girl from Oak Ridge to the broken woman of Glenwood and Charleston, until finally becoming the person I am today in Oceanside. There was so much pain along the way, so many dark nights, so many moments when I thought I wouldn't survive until dawn. But I survived. More than that, I learned to truly live, to flourish even in the rocky soil I was given. And when I see my granddaughter Olivia with her dreams of law school and plans to help other women, I know that my story doesn't end with me. That each small act of courage, even late, can change not just one life, but future generations. This afternoon, Walter called to say he'll visit me next weekend, bringing Olivia, who wants to show me the universities she's researching for next year's applications. I'll prepare cornbread with fennel, her favorite since childhood, and maybe make a special tea to calm the anxiety I know she feels with these important decisions. And so my life continues in Oceanside, day after day, season after season, harvesting the sweet fruits I planted after so many years of storm. It's not a perfect life, no life is, but it's mine. Conquered with tears, with courage, with the determination of a woman who one day decided that she deserved more than just surviving. She deserved to live. My dear friends, you who have accompanied me this far, patiently listening to this old lady's story, let me share what I've learned on this long journey. If my story touches the heart of just one person who is living what I lived, it will have been worth it. For you who are trapped in an abusive relationship, who wake up every day afraid, who hide the marks with makeup and the pain with forced smiles, I want to say, you are not alone. What is happening is not normal. It's not love. It's not your fault. You deserve respect, affection, freedom. You deserve a life without fear. I know it seems impossible to leave. The chains of fear are stronger than any iron shackle. Where will I go? You ask yourself. How will I support myself and my children? What if he finds me? These are the same questions that tormented me for decades. But listen to what I say. There is a way out. It may not be quick, it may not be easy, but it exists. Seek help from a trusted friend, a family member who won't judge, from organizations that exist specifically for women like us. Small steps, one day at a time. I learned that age doesn't define our strength, but rather our ability to start over each day. At 55, I thought it was too late for me, that my life was already defined. I was wrong. It's never too late to seek dignity, to demand respect, to build a new story. My wrinkles are survival maps. Each one tells a story of pain overcome. When I look in the mirror today, I see a woman who survived the unthinkable and still found strength to flourish. You can too. Life taught me that even in the deepest darkness, our inner light never goes out. Even in the darkest days of my marriage, when I thought nothing was left of me, there was a spark kept, protected, waiting for the right moment to turn into flame. I never allowed my dignity to be stolen, even when they tried to take everything from me. In the silence of my soul, I preserved what was essential. You also have that strength inside you, even if you don't know it yet. For the families, friends, neighbors of women in situations of violence, don't turn your face away. Don't pretend not to see the signs. A word of support, a phone number discreetly noted, the sincere offer of help. These small actions can save a life. I waited decades for someone to extend a hand to me. Don't let other women wait so long. I discovered that we are stronger than we imagine, especially when we think we can't take it anymore. In the moments when I thought I would crumble, I found reserves of strength I didn't know I possessed. You have them too. Time doesn't heal all wounds, but it teaches us to live with them and still smile. I carry the scars of my past, but they don't define me. They are just part of my story, not my final destiny. My story is not about what they did to me, but about how I chose to respond. It took me a while to understand this, to realize that even in the cruelest circumstances, we still have the power to choose how to react, how to move forward. For men who grew up seeing violence, who were taught that masculinity means control and domination. There is another way. My son Walter found this truth. True strength lies in gentleness, in respect, in partnership, in building, not destroying. I learned that true fortitude is not in never falling, but in getting up every time. I fell so many times I lost count. But each time I got up, I became a little stronger, a little wiser. Abuse leaves invisible scars, but recovery shows that we can flourish even after the storm. Like the plants in my garden that resist the harshest winter and still sprout in spring. I discovered that my voice, even trembling, has power when I decide to use it. The moment I finally spoke the truth, at that Mother's Day lunch, I changed not just my story, but that of other women. Your voice has that power too. Age has given me the wisdom to understand that it's never too late to start over. At 72, I continue learning, growing, discovering new joys. Life doesn't end when suffering ends. In fact, that's when it really begins. My experience taught me that our story doesn't end in the painful chapters. There is always a blank page waiting to be written, a chance to change the course of the narrative. You have that power in your hands, even if you can't see it yet. I learned that surviving is a form of resistance, and living well is the best revenge. Each day of peace, each moment of genuine joy is a victory against those who try to break me. My dear viewers, help me spread this message. Share this video immediately with anyone who might need to hear these words. Don't wait another minute. One share can be the extended hand that someone is desperately waiting for. It can be the difference between another day of suffering or the first step towards liberation. If this video touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel and hit the bell. Each subscription gives me strength to continue sharing my story, to reach more women who need to know they are not alone. And this is urgent. Each day that passes is another day of suffering for someone. And leave in the comments the word freedom, so I know you watched until the end, that you heard my complete story. This word that took me so many decades to truly understand the meaning of. Do this now. Don't wait another minute. Your action might be the first link in the chain of salvation for a woman who is suffering at this exact moment, just as I suffered. May God bless each one of you, my dear friends. Thank you for listening to this old lady, for giving me the opportunity to transform my pain into purpose. You gave me a gift that Theodore and my sons never managed to take from me, the power to be heard, to have my story valued. And for that, I will be eternally grateful.